blinks in and out because of heavy winds tonight. Our internet is kind of zipping in and out a little bit, so hopefully it's going to remain intact for the time that we're here doing this. So if anyone's not familiar with really what home inspections are in general on property purchases, essentially what it is, a general home inspection is where I come in as a home inspector and I inspect all observable areas of the property. So that includes everything up to attic, everything on the exterior, everything on the interior, all of the major systems such as heating, plumbing, cooling, electric, as well as just general things inside the house, like general operation of the doors, the windows, all built-in appliances like garbage disposals, dishwashers, water heaters, clothes dryers, things like that. But it involves everything. I mean, personally, I can't speak for other inspectors, but for myself, it's always a priority for me to get up on the roof as part of my inspections to see the condition of the roof, as well as any plumbing vents, chimneys, skylights, or any other systems that are mounted up on the roof. So, and I always encourage everyone as part of any of my inspections to attend, ask questions, follow me as I go. The way I look at it is, if it wasn't for my clients, I wouldn't even be there in the first place. So I always encourage everyone to attend the inspection, be involved, get as much information from it as you can. So that's just a general overview about home inspections, what I do. But what I really wanted to get into was really the market conditions that exist today. So probably for about the past 3, now going on 4 years, the real estate market has gotten extremely competitive. Inventory has been going down over the years to the point that buyers have had to get much more creative with their offers to sellers in order to get their offers accepted. So whereas before a common practice was for buyers to write letters to the sellers to try to appeal to their I guess their heartstrings, for lack of a better term. Now it's gone to the level where buyers now, in order to be competitive in a very tight market with reduced inventory, to start waiving inspections. I've worked with many buyers over the past couple of years where they said in order to actually get an offer accepted, they've had to waive inspections. They've put in 10 plus offers on houses. They've all been rejected because people bid more than them. So they've got to try to do something in order to make their offer become more attractive to the seller. So that kind of leads us to where we are with today's market and some of the, I guess, some of the pitfalls that buyers are going to run into. Because we're getting into some of the options that buyers have right now. So probably one of the first ones is, I'm going to go through, I've written down a few things I think are the main options that buyers are going with right now. So the first one would be they waive inspections and they get no inspection whatsoever on the property before they buy it. So there are some pluses and there's some minuses for the buyers. So what are the pluses? For the buyer, it increases the sellability of their offer. It makes their offer more attractive to the sellers because they are willing to forego inspections and make it easier for the seller to get settlement with fewer obstacles, fewer negotiations, and they're able to just complete a sale. And for the buyers, in some cases, that's a positive for them because a lot of them may be in a situation where they're coming out of a lease agreement, they are on a time frame, they need to get into a house quickly. So it can get them into a house quickly. However, what are some of the negatives associated with this? First and foremost, you're giving up your ability to be informed as a buyer. You don't know the condition of the house that you're buying. So sellers are required to fill out, or they should be filling out, some type of seller disclosure statement to let the buyers know the condition of the property to the best of their knowledge that they're aware of. And most sellers are forthright. They're very forthcoming about the condition of the property. But sometimes some things slip through the cracks or some things are forgotten over the years. or you might get the off seller who just is entirely truthful about things. So these are some things that buyers, the pitfalls they can get into when you get into buying a house without inspections. So again, there are positives and there are negatives. The next option would be it's limited in scope, but buyers can opt to have what's called a walkthrough inspection, where they contact a home inspector to come and just do what I call a walkthrough consultation, where it's not a full home inspection. So I have done some of these for some buyers. It's not a full home inspection, and I make that well known in advance that there are extreme limitations on what I'm able to do. So whereas on a normal full-scale home inspection, I would come with my full array of tools. I would come with a ladder to get onto the roof. I would come with a ladder to get into the attic space. I would carry screwdrivers to remove the cover of the electrical panel to see the wiring inside the surface panel. I would carry a moisture meter to test any areas that look like they have some water penetration to see if it's active. With these walkthrough consultations, the only thing I can carry with me is a flashlight because it's not an inspection. So positives for this for the buyers: information. I'm able to give them some information that based on the limited time frame we're in the house. And typically these walkthroughs are limited to the time frame in which they've got for the showing. Could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes or up to an hour. The heater is, how old the air conditioning, how old the water heater is, and any type of other outright issues I can see that are present that are easily apparent to me with my experience and what I see on a normal basis. It looks like we might have blocked up a little bit. Can you still hear me? Okay. I saw that it looked like the screen locked up a little bit, so I just want to make sure that I was still being heard. Okay. So the walkthrough consultation for the buyers, the positive, they're able to get at least some information. The negative, it's not as much information they could get on a full home inspection. So there are limitations associated with that, and they do know that going in. Okay. The third type of option would be to get the property inspected before buying it, which would be the ideal scenario when possible. In this current market, that's not always possible, just because of how competitive things are, and with limited inventory, multiple buyers bidding for a property, it's just not always possible. But whenever they can get it and come into the sale, and they actually have some options and contingencies, that's in their best interest, because they get to find out about the condition of the property beforehand. They can make negotiations on the property and negotiate out sale repairs, or negotiate any type of credits toward any type of repairs they might need on the house. And if things are not to their liking overall with the house, and they decide they want to pass on it and move on, they can do so. So are there negatives with that? I have a hard time seeing there's negatives, because this is protecting the buyer. It's in their best interest. They're getting as much information as they possible. So they get as much information as they can going into the purchase as they can get. Okay. The next one would be the option of getting the property inspected after the purchase. So this would be a scenario where someone had to waive inspections. They had to waive inspections to be competitive within the market. There were probably multiple bidders on the property. It allows them to get the property, so that's a positive for them. So focusing on the positives, they're able to elevate their offer. They're able to make their offer more attractive to the sellers, and that'll hopefully allow them to get the property. So that is a big positive. Negative, obviously, is that now they bought the property, and they have in all likelihood signed off some paperwork where they have waived any type of contingency offers, where they get to negotiate on the house or on the price, or they get to negotiate any type of repairs. So in that situation, now you've got a buyer who has bought the property, and whatever defects exist that you might find out after the fact, now as a new owner, you own those defects. So you no longer have the option to negotiate things out or get repairs made or get money off because you've agreed to waive inspections. So getting some inspection is better than nothing at all. At the very least, the buyer's getting some information that they know the condition of the house. And at that point, they can start to compile a list in terms of priority from highest to lowest, the things that they're going to want to get done and budget that out. Okay. The next type of offer would be, let me see here, my eyes, I need my readers here for this, would be get the property inspected just for informational purposes only. So what is that? That is when a buyer agrees to purchase the property, they come to an agreement with the seller, and what they say is we are not going to ask for repairs and we're not going to ask for credit. What we would like to do is we would just like to get the inspection done for informational purposes only. And that is just for the buyer's knowledge. So they know going in what they're getting into. Now, depending upon the way the agreement of sale is written up and what the realtor has negotiated out for them, it may still give them an out to get out of the deal if there are enough things that come up during the inspection that they decide that they don't want to move forward. At least with this one, this gives you knowledge going in, so you know what you're getting into, and you haven't committed to the purchase, and now you own whatever type of issues might be present in the house. So those are the 5 different type of options that buyers currently have in today's market, which again, very competitive, low inventory, a lot of buyers. And we're getting into that time of the season right now where the spring, where things start to pick up. And this is the time where a lot of buyers, particularly buyers with young families, young kids, they want to get themselves, when they're looking to move, they want to get themselves into a property and get settled in prior to the school year starting in the fall. So now it gives them a good time to get a head start, jump on that. Typically, when someone agrees to buy a sale and all the paperwork goes through, there's probably about a 30-day settlement window. So even if someone agreed to and all the paperwork went through at the end of April, they'd probably be able to move in by the end of May. So this is the time of year where sales people, buyers, eyeballs on properties really start to ramp up, and hopefully more listings are coming on the property as well. So, of all of those options that I just mentioned, which ones do I feel are the best for the buyers? The first one I would say, without question, is when they get the ability to inspect before buying, and they have options where they can make negotiations on the property. It puts the buyer in a much better situation. You get as much information as possible about the property before going into the purchase. You have the ability to take a look at the list of items that you have the most concerns about, rank them in the highest order, and go back to the sellers with your requests, whether it be in the form of credits or requests for repairs. So when it comes to the inspection reports, what I advise buyers, and it's not my call, but what I would say is that you can go back to the sellers with the whole inspection report and ask them to fix everything, but that's generally not going to work out too well. So normally what's best to do is I advise them, go over the report, talk about it with your real estate agent, your professional, about the things that are most important to you from the inspection, and make a list of those things. Make the list of things that are most important to you. Make a list of things that you're willing to take on, and then go back to the sellers with those. So in that regard, that is the number one option to me that buyers have in today's market. That would be in any market. But I know right now with the current market being competitive as it is, that probably is not That's not the option that most buyers are able to take advantage of. But whenever possible, that is what I would always recommend. Okay. So which would be the next best option? Next best option, I would say, would be when the buyers are able to get an inspection of the house yet. They're still gaining knowledge before they actually commit to the purchase, and they know what they're getting into. It helps eliminate surprises. A home inspection cannot eliminate all surprises. Inspections are limited in scope in terms of areas that are accessible, visible, observable. Some things you just can't get to. But at the very least, getting inspection for informational purposes will give the buyer as much information as possible as we can get from an inspection going in, so they can feel educated about their decision. And they can make a decision one way or the other about whether or not they would proceed with the purchase, and whether or not the issues that have been brought up during the inspection are, I guess, monetarily what they can live with, is the best way to put it. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3, I would say, is to get the property inspected after buying it. They bought the property. What you've got is what you've got at that point. However, there are still issues that exist in houses that can be significant from a safety standpoint to the new buyers and the family living in that house. So there are certain issues and items that if you don't know about them in advance and you don't have someone coming to take a look at them, they can pose a safety issue. Probably one of the main things that pops into my head as a real safety issue is inadequate, unprofessional, unqualified electrical work. So oftentimes when I will pull the cover off of an electric circuit breaker panel in the house, oftentimes the work that has been done inside the panel is not safe, not up to any type of electrical standards, not of a professional level. Undersized wires on oversized breakers, things being doubled up, things that pose potential fire hazards. And that if you don't know about these things going in and you don't get the house inspected, these are things that possibly you just may not know about. So getting inspected after buying it, it does still give the buyer knowledge. So at the very least, they can still get these things corrected. They can still make a list of things that are important, things that are most pertinent and safety-based, and they can get those things done. Number 4 would be what I would call a walkthrough consultation, which I talked about earlier. You're not getting all the information, you're at least getting some information. So again, walkthrough consultations are not a full home inspection. It is just based on the limited time frame that you have for the house showing that the buyer has, where it could be 30 minutes, 45 minutes, up to an hour. Home inspections in general don't have a time. So at least I can say that for myself. When you get a home inspection and you're able to get it prior to the purchase of the house, there's no time limit on the inspection. Typically, they're going to take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours based on the size and the condition of the house, but there is no time limit. The time I'm there is for the buyer's benefit, to give them as much information as possible. This is the buyer's time to ask as many questions as possible, to learn as much as they can about the house. So this is one of the downsides of the walkthrough consultation. You're not able to get all the information because you are in a limited time frame. It's not a home inspection that covers the full scope of things that will be covered under a full inspection, like getting up on the roof, going into the attic, pulling the cover off the electrical circuit breaker panel, using the full array of tools. So that's the walkthrough inspection. That would be number 4 on the list. At the bottom, at number 5, obviously would be no inspections at all. And for all the reasons I mentioned above. You're buying all the issues. You don't know what you're getting. You're relying entirely upon the sellers to give you information and expect them to be honest about everything. And hopefully you're getting all the information that they have, and everything is accurate and up to date. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith, and you have to hope that it works. It works out. And I have done inspections for people, for buyers, after the fact, when they've already bought the house, just to get an idea about what they've got and what they bought. And some of the inspections have gone pretty well for them. There are no real issues. Other ones got some surprises they weren't quite expecting. But one thing I would advise everyone, there is nothing that can't be fixed. Everything's correctable. It's just that some things cost more than others. No inspections at all. You're going in with just the limited information you get from the sellers. You have no inspections. You have no additional second set of eyes to look out for you and see what the condition of the house is. Okay. So, one things my approach right now is that buyers have a right to be informed. And I get it. I understand that the current competitive market requires buyers to waive inspections sometimes. They don't want to have to do it. I know that they don't want to have to do it. Low inventory, more buyers than houses for sale. It's just something that needs to be done. I would always recommend, if you can't get an inspection, even for educational purpose, always do so. It just gives you power. More knowledge is empowerment, puts you in a better buying position. And the thing is, when it comes to a home inspection, there's a lot to look at. It's not just doors and windows and making things close properly and everything looks nice. One term I always use with buyers is that you're not buying a bicycle, you're buying a house. There's a lot of moving parts here. A lot of things to know about, from anywhere from roof to attic, to your windows, your doors, your electric, your plumbing, your heating, your cooling, your structural foundation, the exterior of the house. There's a lot to maintain and take care of when it comes to a house. So it's not just a quick walk through, knock on the walls, close the door. Does this window close? Does it lock? There's a lot more to it than that. So whenever someone can get a home inspection, for whenever they can get it under any circumstances, I would always recommend it in any way, shape, or form. Ideally before they buy the house, with negotiations, or if they can at least get it just for informational purposes, or if they're even getting it just after they buy the house, just so they know what they've got. And if there are significant issues that need to be corrected from a safety standpoint, they can get those things done. And that's one of the main things, is when you buy a house with no inspections, significant issues can be passed along. Does it always work out that way? No. Some houses are in pretty good shape, and some sellers are very up to date on keeping their houses up to date and keeping them maintained. They get their furnace serviced regularly. They get someone to come in, check out the roof. They have someone clean out the roof gutters. They have repairs made as they go. Sometimes there are some houses where houses tend to get away from some sellers, where there's just a lot going on. Particularly, I see a lot of that with some older houses in Philadelphia, bigger ones that have steeply pitched roofs, like slate roofs. Some of these, it just ends up kind of snowballing on some people over the years, and there's only so much that they can keep up with at a time. So I'd say if there's probably one area, first of all, that all buyers want to know about. All buyers want to know about the condition of the roof. What does the roof look like? Because that's one of the least things, that's one of the things that most people can't see. And it's one of the most expensive things to replace if it needs to be done as well. And if you've got issues up there that can result in leaks, that can result in other damage as well. So the roof, that can be a significant issue. I did an inspection for a young couple. I think it was the second inspection I did for them a few weeks ago. and the seller had stated that the roof was replaced back in 2022. The issue was that the work that was done when I got up on the roof was not of a professional level. So they put on 3 layers of shingles, and you're really only allowed to have 2 layers per acceptable practices. A lot of just inadequate installation, not done of a professional level. So if the seller doesn't know the type of work that was done, and they just take the word for the contractor that the work was done properly, that's something that can get passed along to the buyer if they've got an inspection and they don't know what type of work was done. The same buyers, they were buying a house that was, the first one I inspected for them was what's called a slab on grade house. So it's just a concrete slab. It doesn't have a basement or crawl space. And the way the house is built, the concrete slab was poured over top of the heating and air conditioning ducts that are inside the floor. But this house being built probably in the late 80s, water penetration beneath the slab floor had gotten into the metal ductwork and corroded it and rusted it out. So when I lifted up floor registers on the floor in the first floor area, there was a lot of rust, corrosion, to the point that dirt and stones from underneath the concrete slab had started to actually fall into the ductwork. So that was an issue that if those young buyers had not been able to get an inspection, they would have bought that issue. And the repair for that actually involves jackhammering up the concrete slab floor to get to the ductwork, replacing the corroded ducts, repouring the concrete, probably in somewhere in the neighborhood of a $10,000 job. So it's just an illustration. I know it's an extreme example, but these are the types of things that buyers can buy into if they buy a property without inspections and not know some of the things that might be hidden underneath the surface. And then it just brings us to the seller disclosure statement in general. So sellers in the state of Pennsylvania are supposed to be filling out a seller disclosure statement where they disclose any known defects that they're aware of with the property, as well as any type of repairs that have been made. So a lot of the disclosure statements, people are good about filling out what they know and what they remember, but sometimes there's things they just don't remember or they're not aware of. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily trying to fill out the disclosure statements in a manner that is evasive or trying to hide anything, but sometimes they just forget about things and sometimes they just don't know about things. Just to give you an example, I inspected a house where at the end of the inspection, I received the disclosure statement after I was done, and the disclosure statement asked if there was a sump pump in the house, and the seller said yes. It asked if the sump pump runs and operates. They said yes. This house had no sump pump. So it was one of those things where I think the sellers they didn't really know what they had or didn't have in the house, and they just kind of checked off boxes, say, yes, we have this, yes, we have this, yes, we have this. So I don't think they were trying to be evasive, but it just illustrates the example that the disclosure statement can't be relied on as to let you know about all the issues that are present within the property. This is where home inspections come in, to give the buyers a second set of eyes that are unbiased to come in to help protect them, to let them know the condition of the property that they're buying. Now, again, a home inspection cannot find everything. There are limitations. It's based on the readily visible conditions that are accessible at the time of inspection. So what that means is some houses are stacked up with a lot of property. Houses also blocked, things can't be gotten to, can't be accessed. So sometimes you just can't get to everything. So again, it's based on the readily accessible conditions at the time of the inspection and what you can get to. So it really is just about whenever a buyer has the ability to get an inspection in any form or fashion, hopefully before the purchase, even for educational purposes, or if they have to get it after they purchase the house, just to give themselves some more information and knowledge. Any inspection is better than none, because even if you've bought the house and you own the issues now, at least if there is an important safety issue that needs to be addressed, they can get it addressed sooner than later. So that's kind of everything I had in regard to current market conditions, the role of home inspections in this process. Does anybody have any questions about that?
If I may insert a comment that we two have been working together for like almost 20 years. Can you hear me, Nick?
I can now, yes.
Okay, great. You know, I have been in real estate for over 20 some years. And I can tell you this, Nick, I learned pretty much 95% of my knowledge from you doing the home inspections with you, house after house after house. And a lot of these details I was never aware of, but you have showed me, even including the gauges of the wire, the plumbing fixture names, the truss, and the beams, what is called, and the type of the wires and GFCIs, plugs, almost everything, every single piece of information I learned it from Nick. Let me talk in Chinese for a second. 这边的话呢，咱们这边群里的话，现在这个 Zoom meeting 大概有20位。你们这边有没有新手？就是还没有自己购买过投资房的，还是比较新手，有没有？如果有新手的话呢，我特别建议，在你开始买投资房的时候，一定要带一个屋检师，比较好的，比较有经验的，而且的话，不单纯是有经验。而且是他愿意把他的这个知识跟你分享，因为你跟他一边在做屋检的时候，你有一些问题可以一边问他，他会给你指出来有些小问题，你可以当时就问他这个东西为什么是这样子。你在这个过程中会学到很多关于房地产的知识。I'm telling everybody, I think for all the starters, for the initial investors, I think it pays to get a home inspector just to come along to do the inspections, because a lot of these home investors, they may not know everything about the real estate, because buying a piece of real estate is such a complex subject. It combines with structural engineering, plumbing, electrical work, home renovations, even some of the home appliances. It combines so many different type of knowledge. I think it's very important to consult a home inspector just to tag along with the reputable. Not only they can find defects, but also it will guide you steps away. I learned a lot of stuff from Nick, because when we're doing home inspections, I was constantly asking Nick about questions about this and that and wiring. So Nick has shared a lot of knowledge with me. So we do have one question from the group, from I believe it's Miss Peng, and she's saying that, "Hi Nick, I recently bought an investment house which was built in 1920s and has no central fuse box for the electricity. Is that a red flag, or it can be resolved? Thank you."
Okay. I'll go back to my original statement that I said earlier. There's nothing that can't be fixed. Everything's correctable, just that some things cost more than others. So no central fuse box. I probably have to actually see that to know exactly what that means. Now, in a lot of older properties, sometimes what happens is there is one original, either a fuse box or a circuit breaker panel, and it tends to be a lower capacity panel, particularly for older houses, because older houses, ones that they were built in the 1920s, they didn't have as many electrical needs as what we do today, 100 years later. 1920 versus 2025. Our electrical needs have multiplied tenfold for all the different things that we run in the houses, central air conditioning, dishwashers, electric clothes dryers, things like that. So if there are multiple panels, more than one, that is not necessarily in and of itself an issue. What's important is how are those panels installed? How is all the wiring installed within those panels? I hope I'm answering the question properly. So it's not so much if there's not just one central panel, say there's multiple boxes on the wall, sometimes you can have multiple sub panels because the smaller original circuit breaker box or fuse box didn't have the capacity to add on all the additional circuits that the property has added on over the years. So sometimes an electrician will install what's called sub panels. It's kind of like branch boxes coming off the main box. So that in and of itself is not an issue. Where it can be an issue is how the installation is laid out and the type of work that was done. So I hope I'm understanding the issue properly without seeing it. I mean, personally, when there are multiple panels in a house, there's a small one in another box and another box and another box and another box. Whenever possible, if it's a single family property, I'd like to see all that consolidated into one centrally located circuit breaker panel that encompasses everything. But if it's an older property that is, say, a multifamily property where it's multiple units, maybe it's a 3-unit, 4-unit building, those will have multiple different circuit breaker panels because oftentimes the electrical system in that building is separated up so the individual tenants can be billed for their own usage. So it can be based on how the property is set up and how the utilities are set up as well. So without actually seeing the property, it's hard to say whether or not it's right or it's wrong. The most important thing just to start off with is that everything is installed and wired properly inside the boxes. All the wires are sized properly for the size of the breakers, professional installation, no safety hazards, no fire hazards. So without seeing everything else, it's hard to say for sure. It all comes down to the installation though. But if it is a multifamily property with multiple living units within it, you will have multiple different breaker boxes inside the house or different fuse boxes.
Thank you, Nick. So this is a single family house. Do we need to rewire all the electricity for the house?
How many boxes would you say that are they in the basement area?
We don't see any boxes.
You don't see any
weird. Yeah.
Okay. There should be at the very least one main circuit breaker or fuse panel box. Now, hopefully it's not a fuse box. Fuses by today's current electrical standards are antiquated. A lot of insurance companies will not write policies on houses that have them, that have fuses versus circuit breakers. So fuses and knob and tube wiring, which is an older type of wiring from about the 1920s, kind of tends to go hand in hand when it comes to an insurability standpoint. So there should be some circuit breaker panels somewhere inside the house. More often than not, if it's just still original single family house, it's going to be somewhere in the basement. So if you look on the outside of the house, I'm guessing since it's an older house, it more likely than not has an overhead power line that comes to the house with a large gray cable on the outside wall and a meter box. If you see that on the outside wall, you'll see a cable that comes out the bottom of that box and goes through a wall. Generally on the other side of the wall in the basement, if it's in the basement, that's where the breaker box will be. Now, there will be some properties or houses where they've actually put that breaker box in a closet. I've seen some condo buildings down in Philadelphia or in the Wynwood area where the breaker boxes, they put them actually inside kitchen cabinets. So it can vary per area, but more often than not, any type of breaker box is going to be located in the basement. So if you locate where the meter box is on the outside of the house, Generally, the circuit breaker panel is within about 15 feet of that, somewhere inside the basement. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Nick. This is helpful.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Nick. Can you tell everybody what kind of inspections do you handle? I know you handle general home inspection, as well as with affiliated businesses doing the radon and termite. And what else do you do?
Sure. In terms of the general inspection, the general home inspection, I perform that myself. I also perform the wood destroying insect inspection, which most people would refer to as a termite inspection. So that would cover any type of wood destroying insect. So that is termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, powder post beetles. Then when it comes to what I would call environmental inspections, I subcontract those out to a separate testing facility. So those type of services would be radon testing, mold and air quality testing, as well as lead paint testing. So I subcontract those out. So if someone is looking to set those up, I take care of getting those arranged and scheduled myself. So it just makes the process a lot easier for the buyer.
Okay. What other inspections can you facilitate? Let's say like a soil testing, like environmental pollution, like the soil to see any chemical compound being left buried, and soil or pool inspection, stuff like that.
Now, when it comes to additional services above and beyond the ones I just mentioned, they get into much more specialized areas. So I don't actually get into scheduling those things. So some of those services might entail septic inspections, asbestos inspections. If there's been an oil tank that has leaked and possibly heating oil might have leaked into the ground, swimming pool inspections. Some of those larger scale inspections like that, I don't actually get into scheduling those. Septic tests and well inspections as well. But I do have contacts and phone numbers of companies I have come in contact with over the years who I know have done good work for buyers in the past. And I'm always happy to pass that information along so that buyers can contact those contractors individually and speak with them about setting up some type of service. So the main ones that I focus on handling myself, I perform the home inspection myself, I perform the termite wood destroying inspection myself, and the items I subcontract out to a separate testing company are the radon testing, the mold air quality testing, and the lead paint inspections, which I know you said the lead paint is a big thing in Philadelphia, particularly for commercial properties as well.
Thank you so much. And I have another question regarding to the electrical supplies. I would say 30 some years ago, you see everybody in Philadelphia County, single family, like row home, they roughly have 100 amps. And sometime maybe sufficient, sometime maybe not. And with the LEDs, with a lot of the home appliances being energy green and energy saving, I see the trend going down. But almost 10 years later, because the electrical vehicles, the ampage, almost see everybody new house being built is minimum 200 amps. Let's say we have some investors in this group, and they're building, let's say, like a single family home. Right now in this current, economic development, what kind of ampage would you recommend for the new builders? Would that be 100? Would that be 200 or 300? I know some of the electric vehicles require minimum 60 amps or even 75 amps. Any changes, any trend in this type of,
Under current building guidelines or acceptable electrical levels. 100 amps is the bare minimum that any house is going to have. New construction, I would say there's no issue with erring on the side of caution and going with 200 amp if you have the option. That way it's going to increase the chance that you're going to have increased power handling capability, particularly if you are going to have EV vehicles that require the additional charging station that's going to have a higher power draw. Absolutely. I would say if new construction, I'm not aware of any new construction, and nor do I recall any new construction house I saw recently that had less than 200 amp service. 200 amp service is pretty much the norm now. And there's always a way to expand on that as well if it's needed, but 200 amp service, I think would probably be sufficient for 90% of all new home builds. And if there's higher consumption needs, that's obviously something that the builder should be talking about with the buyer to get an idea about what's your electrical needs going to be in the house. What type of services are you going to be running? You mentioned in particular about the LED light bulbs. The good thing about the LED light bulbs is they draw a lot less power than the standard old incandescent bulbs. So an old incandescent bulb, say you had a 120 watt light bulb, which most people were not running ones of that wattage. One 120 watt light bulb would pull, I think it was only like 1 amp of power. So you would have to run a lot of incandescent light bulbs to draw enough power to trip a circuit breaker. So the LED bulbs now use a lot less power. It's not to say you can't overload a circuit, but they do pull a lot less power. So less electrical needs. The areas that are going to pull the most electrical service in a house is what's called a 240 volt outlet. So these are going to be higher draw electrical appliances, like an electric water heater, an electric clothes dryer, an electric, air conditioning units. Those all have a 240 volt breaker, and they're going to require more electrical service. So if you're in an area or a house that does not have gas coming into the house or oil, and if everything is on electric, that's going to be having probably more of these 240 larger circuits in the house. But general lighting and outlet use, where you've got the LED bulbs and the fluorescent bulbs, power consumption is much less than what you have with the older incandescent bulbs. But I would still say new construction, 200 amps, that is the norm right now. Mm-hmm.
We have 3 additional questions coming from the chat section. The first question we have is, I have tenant who complain about mold issue. When and what we should do as a landlord to address the issue? Thanks. That's the first one.
Okay. First of all, mold is a water-based issue or moisture-based. So it indicates there is some type of either a leak or high humidity. So I guess the question is, where is the mold present within the tenant's unit? Is it within their bathroom? Is it on a ceiling or a wall? Let's say it's just within their bathroom. That could be the simple result that there is no vent fan in the bathroom to remove all the bath moisture from showering, or they're not opening a window. And they just leave the bathroom and close the door, and all that moisture and humidity just has nowhere to go. That's an easy fix. You've got to open a window, or you've got to put a vent fan in to start removing that bath moisture. So that's one assumption, say it's in the bathroom. However, all that said, the mold will not go away on its own. It would still need to be cleaned up. So any type of mold issue, if you have it, one, you need to have the mold removed, but you also need to address the root cause of it and what caused it, because it doesn't make sense to go through the expense and the trouble of removing the mold in any type of damaged areas if the problem's just going to come right back again. So you have to address the root cause as well. is the mold on a wall or a ceiling, possibly from a plumbing leak or a leak from the exterior? That requires addressing the root cause of the leak. Is it coming from the roof? Is it come from a plumbing leak from a bathroom upstairs? So you have to address the root cause of it in order to make sure that mold's not going to come back. So I would probably say, in terms of hierarchy, in terms of priority, the first thing you need to address is the actual water source itself. What is causing the mold? Is it the plumbing leak? Is it a roof leak? Is it water coming from the outside? Address that first, then take care of cleaning up whatever the mold might be, because if you just remove the mold, cut out damaged drywall, but the leak persists, you're going to end up having to do the same repairs all over again.
So, not quite sure. I think the person who asked the question is still here.
Okay.
Did Nick answer your question, Xiaoying? Okay. Here's the
Really good. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
really good. Thank you. Yeah.
And here's the second question from the chat. Do you do environmental freeze inspections such as building with a gas station laundry store?
Gas station laundry store?
So I think maybe he's trying to do a commercial property inspection. So regarding to the gas station, I would imagine he's talking about the underground tanks and spills and soil, stuff like that. And
Okay.
the laundry store is like a laundromat. Do you do
The laundromat area and areas like that, that is definitely within the scope of things that I would fall within what I would inspect. Underground tanks that are buried, particularly gas tanks, I'm pretty sure those are regulated with the state, and it's definitely out of the scope of what I would look at with a home inspection, in part because it's buried. So there's very limited information I would be able to give about those tanks. So if there's any issue with buying a property that's got gas tanks on the property, that's probably going to be more within the line of licensing and inspections within the state of Pennsylvania to know whether or not those tanks, if there's any type of issues associated with them. So from the standpoint of a general home inspection, that's going to fall outside the scope of what I would be able to assess and give you an idea about. The laundromat, general area like that, some other commercial property like that, that is well within my scope.
That's great. That's great. I do have one additional question in chat section is the air quality test required for the sale of the house or rental purposes?
To the best of my knowledge, there are no inspections that required in any regard. The only thing that I've heard over the 22 years I've been performing inspections is every once in a while a lender has required the buyer to get a termite inspection, and that's it. Air quality tests, I have never heard that. I'm not aware that that's required by anybody. Now, that could vary per lender, per insurance company, but I've never heard anyone say that. I've never heard any of my clients or buyers state that the lender requires an air quality test or the insurance company requires an air quality test. Generally, that is done at the option of the buyer themselves. And the thing is, when it comes to the air quality tests and mold quality tests, there is no known safe level of mold. It affects people differently. So from that standpoint, some people can live around mold or poor air conditions their entire life and have no issues. But then there's other people who have asthma, allergies, breathing issues, much more sensitive to these things, much more susceptible. They can come to a house and in 10 minutes start having issues. So, but getting back to the original question, to the best of my knowledge, no, there is no requirement to have air quality tested in the house. That is purely at it's up to the option of the buyer if they wish to have that done. Hope that answers the question.
If I may, allow me to retort on this question a little bit. We had I'm not saying it's going to be I can't even say the landlord's name or the case number, but one of the landlords being sued in court because his current tenants is pet allergic. However, the landlord failed to disclose that his prior tenants has pets, and the cleaning of the house is such a huge expense. It's almost unbelievable. This is something related to the air quality, maybe not, but this is something you also need to be aware of as the landlord when you're signing leases. If you have ever had pets before in the house, the thorough cleaning is required, and also the disclosure need to be handed down to the next tenants to make sure that they are aware if there were pets before in the house. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I do not have any questions. Do anybody else in this the meeting have any questions for Nick? Nick, I have one additional question regarding to the electrical.
Mhm.
You see, one of the actually my buyer has asked me this question, which I couldn't answer for him. He told me right now because the solar panels are so popular because the tax rebates and incentives. And do you recommend them to have like this actually generates electric and then send back to the grid, or you prefer them to have an independent, which means the solar panels generate certain electricity and being sent down to the basement, they have like lithium iron phosphate battery packs, like stacks, store them together instead of sending back to the grid. Which would you prefer? Simplifies the process, makes things much more friendlier for the homeowners.
Sure. I mean, I guess there's a couple reasons I think anyone gets in any type of solar program in their house. I think first and foremost, people who get into that, they're doing it from an environmental standpoint because they believe in green energy, they believe in solar, and looking for alternative energy sources, which that's probably first and foremost for a lot. When it comes to the cost savings, and I guess in terms of where the money goes or where it doesn't and who gets the money or the savings, I've heard varying opinions from that, where some people have gotten into it's kind of like a 20-year lease with these solar panels, and they're not necessarily saving a lot of money. So that I know that's going to vary based on individuals and their what the type of agreement they entered into with the solar company and how the equipment works. So I can't really say one way or another which one is best. Although I would say probably at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the buyer to evaluate all the paperwork, the contract that they're getting into with the solar company, and in terms of what they can expect from, I guess, a savings standpoint, what benefit are they really getting from these solar panels? Because it varies so much. And I've heard that some people say that it was more of a headache than anything. And some people were buying a house that was getting a house that had the solar panels, that was part of a lease agreement, and it was not something that they really wanted to enter into, but it was locked into the property. So I don't really have an opinion about that one way or the other, because that's really going to be up to the property owner to really kind of evaluate what is best for their situation and what benefit is the solar going to be to them above and beyond any type of green energy initiatives that they want to take on. I hope that makes sense.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to ask everybody in the meeting to see if they have any questions. 大家还有什么其他问题没有? Oh, by the way, Nick, we're going to be uploading this video into our YouTube channel for additional viewings of the group. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. 其他人还有什么问题没有？如果没有问题的话呢，我会把 Nick 的 contact information 一会儿通过 WeChat 给大家发过来，让大家以后可以直接去联系 Nick，有什么需要 inspection 的。I've just told everybody I'm going to distribute your contact information through our group, so everybody will have your phone numbers and email. So in the future, if they need inspection services, they will contact you directly.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Truly appreciate you coming along, and educate us. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you. You have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you.
everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Great. Everybody. 那我就下网了。Thank you. 谢谢大家。好，
Thank you
再
all.
见。谢
Have a
谢。
good night.
Thank you. Good night. Good night, Nick.
Good night, Alex. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye
Bye.
now.